Hello, what's up? Today I want to talk about intensive and extensive efforts. I wanted to talk about this because I saw this interview with Robert Greene, who is the author of the 48 Laws of Power. And he says that the tip should be to concentrate your power, which means that when you have to decide between intensive and extensive efforts, you should choose intensive. Now, intensive obviously means you focalize your attention on one specific thing or one specific area of your life or whatever it is that you're doing of your activities, right? You focalize it. And extensive means that you cover many different areas, right? It's long, it's extensive, it covers more ground, right? So he was saying that intensive always defeats extensive, right? Which is going from one place to another. And I thought about this and I was like, well, actually, if you have like a burst of energy and you do something, you're going to run out of energy eventually. So, what you really want to do is go in it for the long run, right? Like, think about a marathon. In a marathon, for example, you need to run for a long time. So if you run the fastest you can right at the start of the race, you're going to get tired, and the rest of the race you're not going to be able to run it. You're not going to be able to finish it, right? If you run the marathon, you should not have the intensive mentality. You should have the extensive mentality, because you're going to take longer to finish the race. For example, in the sprint, when you run a sprint, that's a little bit different, because a sprint, you need to be very fast, you need to be very intense, and therefore you need to be intensive with that race. So it's kind of like, do you prefer to have a marathon ideology or a sprint ideology? Do you prefer to work to finish something really quick, really intense, right? Because I think it's needed, for example, like in a sprint race. Or are you in it for the long run and you need to cover more ground and therefore distribute, your energy levels? I think we should all focus on long-term objectives, so you don't want to get burned out at the beginning, right? So whenever you have to choose between intensive and extensive, I would recommend not intensive, but go for extensive, right? Because again, you're probably running a marathon. You're not going to run on bursts of energy, right? Because they dissipate, they eventually go away. And when they go away, you're not going to feel motivated, right? Which is kind of hard to do. I mean, we run on ideas, but ideas eventually need to be developed into something more mature, something more long lasting, right? That first initial intensity needs to be distributed extensively for the long run, right? For a long term. Now, I first learned about extensive and intensive, these ideas, from reading. In reading comprehension, you have something that's called extensive reading and intensive reading. Intensive reading, for example, you do it when you need to read to write up a report or do an investigation or do a homework assignment. So you focalize your attention, it's intensive, right? You get it done and that's it. You're not doing it for fun. Extensive reading is the opposite. It's when you're doing it for fun, right? Think intensive reading, research papers and research articles. Think extensive reading, fiction books, right? So you're reading stories, made up stories, right? Fantasy maybe. Yeah, so in my opinion, extensive covers more ground, and you can be intensive when you find traces of gold, right? Let's say like in the gold mine, people were digging to find gold. And the moment that you got a glimpse of, traces of gold, you started to dig very quick, right? You started to dig intensively to try to get the most gold, right? But up to then, when you don't really know where the gold is, I think you need to be extensive. You need to cover as much ground as you can. So then you can focalize your attention on a specific area once you do find it. By the way, focalization is exhausting, right? It's going to tire you out eventually. Um, and extensive can be too, right? Extensive can become exhausting when all you're doing is looking everywhere, but you're not really focalizing attention anywhere specifically. The world demands variety. The world demands for you to sometimes be intensive and other times be extensive. But overall, I think you should be extensive, right? So that's all I got for this video, and I'll see you all next time.